tonight we climb into the saddle. Literally. We're plunging into the eerie, wind-blown stillness of the Central Asian steppe, where your only companions are the stars, your horse, and the steady creak of leather under tension. You sway slightly, but not because you're tired, though you are. It's because your horse is still moving beneath you. And somehow, impossibly, your eyes close. You are asleep, while standing on a horse. Yes, that's real. Mongol warriors did it. And tonight, so do you. Picture it. The faintest suggestion of dawn smudging the edge of the sky, frost clinging to your sleeves, and your breath forming little ghosts in the cold air. The world is silent, save for the crunch of hooves against frozen ground, and the distant cry of something. Maybe a hawk, maybe a demon, maybe just your imagination. You blink slowly, but the line between waking and dreaming is blurry now. That's your brain trying to process that yes, you're unconscious. And yes, you're somehow still upright. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive this. Not unless you were raised in a world where horses were beds, mountains were road signs, and war drums were lullabies. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with your location and the time where you are. I love knowing who's listening and where from. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint into the flat emptiness ahead. The Mongol horde isn't just traveling, it's flowing. An organism, hundreds of thousands strong. Its riders moving like rivers of iron and wool. And in that motion, in that rhythm, some of them sleep, upright, in full gallop or a slow trudge. The idea seems absurd until you remember something. These aren't casual equestrians. These are people who learned to ride before they could walk. Literally. A Mongol child might be plopped on a goat first. Yes, a goat for practice. Then promoted to a pony by age 2. By 5, they're galloping solo, firing arrows while standing on the horse's back just for fun. So, while you might clutch a saddle horn with white-knuckled terror, a Mongol kid is leaning back with arms outstretched, seeing how long he can ride with his eyes closed. Training or nap time? Same thing. And the world they grow into only deepens this connection. Horses aren't pets. They're life sources. Transportation, weaponry, communication, companionship. Imagine if your car had feelings, liked head pats, and could smell an ambush. You'd probably bond. But sleep while riding, that's the mind bender. It turns out sleep isn't always horizontal. If you've ever drifted off standing in a subway, or nodding off in class with your chin hovering just above your notes, you've already touched the edge of it. Mongol warriors just took that talent and leveled it into a martial art. Still, even for them, the early hours were the worst. That pre-dawn stretch when your bones ache and your eyes burn, and your brain invents excuses to stop. But you don't stop, because behind you, someone might be chasing. And ahead of you, glory or death. Sometimes both. Your fingers adjust instinctively on the reins. You lean slightly forward into the horse's mane. The warmth rises up, sweet and musky, and your body synchronizes with the rhythm. Or left, right, left, rock, sway, blink, dream. And there it is, that moment. The soft dissociation where your body rides and your brain detaches, floats, drifts. Some scholars believe this riding sleep emerged from extreme necessity. These warriors crossed thousands of miles on horseback, sometimes traveling 100 miles a day. That's 4 marathons. Through deserts, mountains, and enemy territory, there simply wasn't time to stop and nap like civilized folks. So the body adapted. And here's your first quirky detail of the night. Many Mongol riders trained themselves to dream with their eyes open. Or rather, they learned to let their face slacken into wakefulness while their minds slipped sideways. Historians still argue whether this was a conscious meditative trick or simply the result of relentless exhaustion. Either way, they called it bone sleep, deep rest while remaining upright, bones locked like scaffolding. And the real MVPs of this trick? The horses. Steppe ponies are like the Toyota Hilux of animals, sturdy, tireless, unbothered by cold, hunger, or arrows. They'd walk all day with a barely breathing rider on their back and not bat an ear. Mongols often named their horses after emotions or colors, and it wasn't just sentiment, it was a bond forged in motion. You glance down. Your own mount, in this dream state, moves as though guided by ghost roads. You've stopped thinking about balance. Your legs have become part of its body. Your hands twitch slightly on the reins, not to guide, but to respond. You are a centaur of sleep. And the dangers? Oh, they were real. Riders fell. Horses stumbled. There are tales, half myth, half truth, of warriors who slipped into dream too deep and rode straight into rivers, ravines, even enemy camps. Imagine being so good at sleeping upright that you accidentally invade China. Whoops. But more often, they made it. They slipped into semi-lucid states, resting in the trust between man and beast, and emerged blinking hours later with the sun higher and the horizon unchanged. It wasn't always restful. There are legends of dreams filled with arrows and hooves, of phantom drums thudding just out of earshot. Some believed the wind carried ancestral voices across the plain, whispers and warnings in sleep. If you ever feel a cold breath on your cheek tonight, maybe it's just your fan, or maybe it's a Mongol general checking your riding posture. So still think you could sleep like a Mongol? Lean back, let your body sway, breathe with the horse. Trust your legs to hold, your balance to guide, and your dreams to ride onward. Your body doesn't just learn to ride, it evolves to ride. After years in the saddle, your thighs develop a grip, like steel tongs. Your lower back flexes and adapts to every bump. Your hands stop sweating when you hold the reins. Your palms mold to the leather like it's grown from your skin. You don't think balance anymore. You are balance. Sleep becomes just another function you perform in motion. Like breathing or blinking or muttering, I swear this is the last time I do this. For the 10th time today. The Mongols didn't invent horses, obviously, but they might have perfected riding them. Genghis Khan built an empire on horseback. His soldiers, including you now, could ride for days with minimal food, drink horse blood when dehydrated, yes, really, and sleep standing up without falling off. That's not folklore. That's logistics. Your mount snorts beneath you, warm breath curling up into the frigid air. You barely notice the cold anymore, because your deal, this thick woolen overcoat, is wrapped snugly around you like a mobile blanket. The sash is tied tight around your waist, not for fashion, but to prevent your guts from shifting during a gallop. Functional chic, Mongol edition. The saddle you sit on isn't some plush Western affair. It's made of wood, high in front and back like a medieval roller coaster seat, designed to keep you anchored even during rough maneuvers. The stirrups hang wide, encouraging that knees apart, battle-ready posture. You could hang a sleeping baby from your belt and it wouldn't fall. You've basically been engineered to nap in motion. And let's not skip over the horse itself. This creature isn't the showy, glossy breed you'd see winning ribbons. Steppe ponies are short, stout, fussy little tanks. Their manes are wiry, their eyes half-lidded in eternal boredom, and their stamina unholy. A Mongol warrior typically had 3 to 5 horses in rotation, changing them out like marathon runners swapping shoes. That's how you cover 100 miles and still have time for some light plundering before bedtime. Some scholars say it was the saddle that made Mongol napping possible. The high wooden pommels, front and back, gave your body something to lean against, allowing micro-rests even while trotting. Others argue it was more about posture, how your spine and hips align naturally to absorb motion while your brain caught Z's. And then there's the fringe theory, that certain riders train themselves to enter a waking trance, something like modern-day lucid dreaming, where part of the mind stays alert for danger while the rest dips into the dream world. You know, just your typical multitasking war nap. But of course, not everyone nailed it. Imagine being the new guy in the horde, trying to impress your squad by sleeping while riding, and waking up in a frozen creek, your horse sipping beside you like nothing happened. Yeah, not the best first impression. Mongol humor was brutal. You'd earn a nickname like River Pillow or Mud Eyes and never live it down. Your own eyes flutter. You're feeling it now, aren't you? The rhythm, the hypnotic sway. Each step your horse takes is like a lullaby hummed through the soles of your feet. Your knees are slightly bent. Your hands rest on the saddle horn. Your breathing matches the pace of the hoofbeats. The world starts to blur, not spin, not tilt, just blur, gently. You could stay here forever. In reality, Mongol warriors weren't just dozing on peaceful joyrides. Often, they were traveling at night, slipping across terrain as quietly as ghosts, avoiding detection by enemy scouts. Some raids began before dawn, timed so that the enemy would still be fumbling with their boots when the first arrows rained down. That meant sleep had to happen en route. A soldier who couldn't nap in motion might miss their one window of rest for the next 48 hours. And that's the strange part, how natural it becomes. The first few nights, your legs ache, your back screams, and your eyelids twitch from trying to stay alert. But by the 5th night, the horse becomes your bed and your battlefield. Sleep is no longer a location. It's a state of acceptance. There's even this one peculiar tidbit, possibly exaggerated, possibly not, about warriors using their helmets as pillows. Not while riding, but during brief ground stops. The conical shape cradled the neck, and if you tilted it just right on the saddle horn while still mounted, well, let's just say some warriors had their favorite nap helmets. If that's not a luxury travel tip, I don't know what is. Historians still argue whether sleeping while riding was common practice or an emergency skill. Some accounts describe elite couriers and special messengers doing it out of necessity, especially those in the Yam system, the Mongol Empire's postal service, where messages traveled across thousands of miles in record time. Others say it was more widespread, a cultural adaptation rooted in sheer toughness and overexposure to horse-based existence. The truth, probably somewhere in between. Like many Mongol habits, it's hard to separate myth from muscle memory. But here's a wild image for you. A column of riders moving at dusk. Hundreds of them, eyes half closed, mouths slack, horses pacing silently through scrub and ice. They don't speak. They don't need to. Each man is cocooned in his own little moving dream. And yet the horde moves as one, like a drifting cloud of wool and steel. You're one of them. And for a moment, you forget who you are. outside of this, outside the saddle, the sleep, the steady rocking march toward whatever lies ahead. Because this isn't just travel, it's transformation. Your body isn't fighting the horse anymore. It's become an extension of it. You're not surviving the journey. You are the journey. And your dreams, well, they ride too. Tucked behind your eyelids, curled up next to your spine, waiting to unfurl with the morning light. So go ahead. Let your chin drop. Let the cold wind tug at your hood. Your horse knows the way. Somewhere between gallop and stillness, between breath and memory, you slip deeper into this wandering rhythm. The Mongol night is quiet, but not silent. There's always the distant whicker of another horse, the soft thump of hooves pressing into snow or dry grass, the occasional hawk cry overhead, sounding like it's judging your posture, but otherwise, just you, your fussy little war pony, and the endless steps stretching out like an oversized windswept yoga mat. You've learned the first law of Mongol sleep. Motion doesn't break rest, it sustains it. Of course, not every night is so cinematic. Sometimes you're soaked, sometimes frostbite nibbles at your toes like an indecisive squirrel. But tonight is what the old warriors would call Erdanian Oroi, the golden peak. Not just because of the moonlight, but because your bones have finally stopped arguing with your saddle. Now here's a historical gem. Mongol warriors would often sleep with their legs still hooked in the stirrups, knees slightly bent, feet secure, reins looped loosely around a wrist. No tying, no buckling, just an understanding between man and beast. You trust your horse more than you trust most people. And frankly, the horse is usually more dependable. No offense, jockey. A fun fringe tidbit? Some warriors swore by sleeping with one eye open, literally. The trick was to rest one side of the brain while the other stayed alert, owl style. Scientists today call this unihemispheric sleep. And while it's well documented in dolphins and some birds, the idea that humans, especially war-hardened humans, could train themselves into a version of it isn't completely off the table. Whether it's true or not, you definitely know that half-aware, I hear you but I'm also dreaming state of half-sleep, especially when you've had fermented mare's milk before bed. That stuff hits weird. Your saddle creaks as you shift your weight, adjusting to find that perfect, almost mythical posture. The one that cradles your spine, supports your hips, and makes your eyelids do the slow dance. Some call it the warrior's cradle. Others, too much riding, not enough napping. Regardless, it works. And that's what matters when your next stop is 200 miles away and someone forgot the yak jerky. Historians still argue whether Mongol riders developed their sleep techniques naturally, over time, or whether there were formal methods taught to young warriors. Some believe it came from observing the animals themselves, how horses, goats, and even camels managed to rest while upright. Others think it might have stemmed from early childhood conditioning. Boys were put on horseback as toddlers and learned the feel of balance before they could even read. So by the time they reached puberty, sleeping while moving wasn't some advanced trick. It was just Tuesday. That early start is important. Mongol boys were trained not just in riding, but in hunting from horseback, shooting arrows backward while galloping, and, of course, dozing without falling to their deaths. It's sort of like your modern multitasking, if your multitasking included dodging arrows, napping, and staying warm in -10 degrees while holding onto a half-feral pony. No pressure, Here's a peculiar little cultural gem. When Mongol soldiers did finally stop to rest properly, they often did so in tight circles, forming a human and horse donut. Horses on the outside, warriors on the inside. Not for warmth, though that helped, but for security. The horses were early warning systems, their ears twitching at the slightest sound. You'd sleep with your bow within arm's reach and your boots still on, because comfort was a distant cousin no one wrote to anymore. And when your commander gave the signal to ride, even if it was deep in the night, you didn't groan, you didn't hit snooze, you snapped awake, because part of your brain was never asleep in the first place. It was a system built on trust, tension, and timing. Too poetic? Fine. It was a system built on survival and sheer stubbornness. Better. You shift again, this time laying one arm across the front pommel of your saddle, your chin resting on your sleeve. The cold numbs your cheeks, but it's almost comforting now, like the nip of peppermint or the zing of waking up before dawn on a fishing trip. Except, instead of catching trout, you're hoping not to get trampled by your own horse if you snore too hard and spook it. There's also a joke among Mongol riders, one of the cleaner ones, that the best warriors were the ones who could dream of battle and win it while still asleep. You chuckle softly at the thought. Maybe you've done that. Maybe you've tilted your chin into your shoulder, drifted off to dream of charging across a river, and woken up realizing you'd crossed 3 in real life. Memory gets fussy when everything feels like motion, and motion, at this point, is everything. Your world is built on it. Stationary life feels distant, like something other people do. You ride, you doze, you fight, you eat in brief stolen moments, and then you do it all again. Mongol life wasn't built around long rest. It was built around constant adaptation. You're not sleeping between events. You're sleeping during them. Some nights you think of what it might feel like to lie flat on a bed, like a real bed, not a rolled-up felt mat or a saddle pressed into your spine. But then your horse shifts slightly, and you remember the trade-off. Flat beds don't move with you. They don't keep rhythm. They don't hum lullabies in the form of hoofbeats. You pull your scarf tighter across your mouth and lean slightly forward, the saddle horn pressing gently into your chest, just enough to brace your weight. The horse doesn't flinch. It's used to this. Maybe it's asleep too, some deep equine meditation state where it walks by instinct, like a monk doing laps in the desert. You can't quite tell if you're dreaming or remembering, but either way, you smile. The moon above is fat and heavy, low on the horizon like it's watching you with one big glowing eyeball. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote yips once and is quickly shushed by the endless stretch of night. And you? You let your muscles melt into the familiar creak and sway. The step rocks you gently, and the chill whispers against your skin. You are not just surviving. You are drifting upright between worlds. Your breath forms little ghosts in the night air as the pace slows slightly, the herd thinning into staggered silhouettes against the horizon. You've long since stopped noticing the numbness in your knees, either because your body's adjusted or because you've just accepted it as a permanent life choice. Either way, congratulations. You're now a certified member of the elite Napping Nomads Club, with full privileges, including sleep-deprived hallucinations and a deep spiritual bond with your horse's rear end. Tonight, the stars are especially sharp, like someone just polished the sky with a yak hairbrush. Above you, constellations older than your ancestors guide your path. You might not know their names, but you trust their placement. The North Star's hanging just where it should be, stubbornly refusing to blink. Mongol warriors used it to navigate long before compasses wandered into the conversation, though there's a rumor that one particularly salty commander insisted he could find his way just by sniffing the wind and arguing with the stars. Now, let's talk gear, because let's face it, sleeping standing up is hard enough without being wrapped in the medieval version of a burrito. Mongol riders wore thick felt robes called deel, layered for warmth, flexibility, and the occasional dramatic cape a moment. These weren't just garments, they were beds, blankets, and sometimes even emergency tents, if you happened to fall off and wanted to pretend it was intentional. Your boots? Made of thick leather and lined with fur, great for riding, slightly less great for smelling. You try not to think about it. Besides, there's something strangely comforting about feeling the vibrations of the horse's hooves travel up through the soles, like a heartbeat you've borrowed for a while. Quirky detail incoming. Some warriors kept tiny pillows. Not the kind you're picturing with frilly edges and memory foam, but compact pouches stuffed with wool or horsehair. These were tied to the front of the saddle and used to rest their head or elbows when leaning forward in sleep. Think of it as the world's first travel neck pillow, minus the airport drama and overpriced trail mix. Historians still argue whether this practice of upright sleep was widespread across the entire Mongol Empire or reserved mainly for elite riders and messengers who had to stay in motion for days on end. Some sources suggest Genghis Khan himself preferred to rest this way when urgency demanded it, using his horse like a mobile throne of dreams. Others think it was more myth than method, a story grown taller than the saddle horn over generations. Either way, it speaks volumes about the relationship between rider and beast. You're not sitting on a horse. You're fused with it. Your legs shift with its gait automatically, and your body reacts before you consciously know there's a dip in the terrain. At this point, if your horse tripped, you'd probably just somersault with it and keep riding like it was choreographed. Now, imagine this. You're part of a long convoy, a whispering line of shadowy shapes weaving across the plain. Everyone's dozing or halfway there. Occasionally, a snore echoes, then a cough, then the sound of someone unwrapping dried cheese. You glance sideways and catch someone else's eye, just for a second, and you both smirk. Yep, sleep cavalry life. In these twilight hours, time stops behaving properly. Minutes stretch, then collapse into strange little jumps. One moment, you're watching the moon. The next, you're blinking at the sunrise, bleeding across the grasslands like warm tea over parchment. You might have slept, you might not have, but you feel rested, enough at least, to keep going. There's an odd magic to this rhythm. Wait, ride, sleep, eat when you can, share salty horse jokes when morale dips too low. Why did the war pony refuse oats? Because he was already on a roll. Okay, maybe they're not great jokes, but sleep deprivation is a generous audience. At some point, your horse stumbles slightly. Nothing dramatic, just a quick trip over an uneven patch, and you jolt upright. Reflexes sharper than reason, you catch yourself. Your hand tightens on the reins. The world blinks back into focus. You murmur something to the horse, a half apology, half reprimand, and it flicks its ears like it's rolling its eyes at you. Same old story. You exhale slowly and settle back into your lean. Your body remembers the rhythm before your mind catches up. And even though your face is cold, your core stays warm from the motion and the felt layers and the faint warmth of the horse beneath you. A tiny fire flickers in the distance. Another unit, perhaps. Maybe they've stopped for a real rest. You envy them, but only slightly, because there's something noble, something strangely peaceful about continuing forward like this. You don't need a full stop, you just need the next moment. And then the next. Another fun fact, Mongol messengers, the yam couriers, were legendary for their ability to cover hundreds of miles in mere days, thanks to a relay system of horses and, yes, brief standing naps. These riders were trained to leap from one horse to the next at full gallop and were expected to ride through storms, darkness, and hostile territory without pause. Your routine tonight? Downright luxurious by comparison. The deeper you sink into this half-sleep state, the more your surroundings fade into symbols. The horse's mane becomes a banner. The saddle becomes a cradle. The step stretches into an ocean of dreams, and you float gently, steadily forward, lulled by hooves and heartbeat. You pass a hillock shaped like a sleeping giant. Or maybe it is a sleeping giant. Hard to tell at this point. Your brain is in that peculiar space where history, hallucination, and muscle memory blend into one surreal lullaby. And weirdly, it works. The world narrows to the rhythm of your breath, the sway of the horse and the distant, constant wind. And just like that, you drift again, eyes half closed, chin nestled into your scarf. The stars wheel overhead, patient and ancient. You are the dreamer. The sunrise leaks over the horizon with all the subtlety of a dropped canteen, throwing warm gold across the frosted plain. Your eyes flutter open, not because the light hits them directly, but because your horse shifts beneath you, signaling a change. Riders around you stretch, yawn. One even mutters something in a dialect you don't recognize but somehow understand. It probably translates to, well, still not dead. Let's do it again. Your body aches in that satisfying way. A kind that comes from doing something ridiculous but meaningful. You've officially passed your first night of riding sleep. Not quite restful, not quite exhausting. Somewhere in between, like a nap you take while standing in line at the DMV, except you're in full armor, and your DMV is also a warhorse. The day begins with the usual rituals. Tightening straps, adjusting the deal, checking your horse's hooves. Mongols were obsessed with horse care, and for good reason. Lose your mount, and you might as well be a turtle without a shell. Warriors were known to carry sewing kits not for mending clothes, but for patching up horse gear mid-ride. There's even a story, probably apocryphal, but who cares, about a general who stitched a saddle with one hand while shooting arrows with the other. Overachiever. Your saddle, by the way, is a marvel. Mongol saddles were stiff, high-fronted, and high-backed, designed to keep riders in place during combat, and conveniently while napping. Think of it like a very judgmental lazy boy that also goes 40 miles per hour, and occasionally tries to buck you off if it steps on something weird. Here's a little known tidbit. Some elite warriors would tie their legs to the saddle for long hauls, not just to stay mounted while sleeping, but to keep from sliding during battle maneuvers. It's the historical version of a seatbelt, minus the clicky part and government-mandated reminders. As you ride, the landscape changes ever so slightly. The plains undulate with subtle grace, like the earth's taking slow breaths. You pass a lone tree, stunted by wind but still stubbornly alive. Someone once told you trees were bad luck on the steppe. Too solitary, too strange. Others believed they were sacred markers left by ancestors. Historians still argue whether these trees served any ritual purpose, or were just sad little shrubs that happened to survive the goats. The group moves in waves, never in a straight line. Mongol formations were loose, intuitive. Discipline existed, of course, but it wasn't the tight, clanging kind you'd find in Roman or Persian ranks. Mongols flowed, they moved like weather. Even sleep was part of that flow. You catch a whiff of something, smoke maybe. Dung fire, possibly breakfast, probably all three. Up ahead, a cart rumbles slowly, driven by someone who looks far too awake for this hour. Maybe they're from a support unit, or maybe they just drank whatever terrifying concoction passes for coffee out here. You resist the urge to ask for a sip. As the sun climbs, so does the warmth. You loosen your outer layer and feel the air shift around your chest. Fresh, almost sharp. The saddle creaks under you, like it's trying to complain. And now, the real game begins, staying alert after a standing sleep. Your brain tries to return to full power, but it's like waking up your phone after a 3% charge. Slow, glitchy, full of bad decisions. You pass another rider who is still asleep. Impressive. Upright, slouched slightly forward, rein slack in hand, but somehow perfectly balanced. The horse seems used to it, plodding steadily forward with the expression of a long-suffering barrister. No one wakes the guy. Why would they? That's practically sacred out here. In between moments of mental clarity, you remember the old sayings, tales told around campfires about warriors so skilled they could dream entire battles and then win them the next day. Exaggeration? Of course, but also not entirely impossible. Some Mongol shamans believed that dreams during rides were more vivid, more truthful. The rhythm of the horse opened you up, like a key in a lock. There's even an odd bit of folklore about warriors who trained themselves to deliver messages in their sleep. Riding by night, half awake, repeating their words like mantras until they could recite them even in dreams. Some were said to whisper battle orders through clenched teeth. Others practiced oaths, poems, or prayers. You try it, just a few words, a sentence, something small. You whisper it once, again, then again with the rhythm of the horse's stride. You're not sure if it's working, but it feels ancient, sacred, like tapping into a frequency that's always been there. Suddenly, there's motion. A flock of birds explodes from a patch of tall grass, wheeling in the air like black confetti. Your horse jerks, not in fear, just mild irritation. You steady yourself, reins tightening instinctively, and feel your balance hold. Not bad for someone running on dreams and fermented mare's milk. Let's talk milk. Mongols adored airag, a slightly alcoholic beverage made from fermented mare's milk. Cold, fizzy, vaguely alarming to the modern palate. But out here, it was hydration, nutrition, and morale boost all in one. Some warriors claimed a good swig could make you feel like you'd just woken from a full 8 hours, warm bath included. Others said it mostly just helped them forget how much their thighs hurt. You reach for your own flask and take a sip. Sour, effervescent. Bold choice for breakfast, but it does the trick. Your muscles loosen, your vision clears. You even smile a little, despite yourself. Ahead, a ridge comes into view, and beyond it, the land dips into a small valley, likely a resting point, a place to dismount, stretch, maybe trade gossip about who fell asleep snoring and nearly slid off their mount last night. But part of you doesn't want to stop. There's something addictive about the movement, the blend of exhaustion and clarity, like surfing a wave that never crests. This isn't just sleep on horseback, it's meditation in motion. You look around. The other riders, some alert, some nodding off again, are with you in this strange dance. And you realize this: it's not about endurance, it's about surrender. You let the rhythm take over, let the step carry you, let the horse be your hammock and the wind your lullaby. No tent, no mattress, just sky, hooves, and the quiet promise of forward. You descend the ridge with your knees loose, heels just grazing the flanks of your horse. The valley below unfolds, like a basin carved gently by time, grassy, uneven, with the lacy ribbon of stream trailing through it like spilled ink. Riders are beginning to slow, some peeling off toward the banks, others staying in motion, letting their horses drink without dismounting. You follow suit, mostly because you've grown fond of the illusion that you and your horse are a single being now. Spoiler: your thighs disagree. The water's cold when your mount steps in, sending a shiver up your calves. Your horse slurps at the stream with noisy satisfaction, its breath fogging the morning air. You glance around at the other warriors, the quiet choreography of a people who move with purpose, even in rest. They adjust gear, swap dried meat, rub stiff shoulders. Someone yawns wide enough to dislocate their jaw. Someone else sneezes and nearly topples from their horse. Classic morning. You let your head tip forward, not quite asleep, but nowhere near alert. And just like that, the story deepens. Because now, you see, the why behind Mongol warriors sleeping standing up isn't just about convenience. It's about readiness. Imagine never truly resting because war has no off switch. Your body becomes an extension of the saddle, your instincts braided into the reins. You nap, sure, but you're always just one gallop away from an ambush or an opportunity. Mongol campaigns stretched thousands of miles, literally across continents. Sleep wasn't a luxury, it was a battlefield adaptation. Genghis Khan's infamous lightning raids required relentless movement. Troops would ride for days with barely a pause, sometimes sleeping while the horses walked, galloped, or swerved them through enemy terrain. The legend goes that a Mongol scout once traveled over 200 miles in a single day, sleeping in 30-minute stretches, while his horse trotted forward unfazed. Historians still argue whether such distances are physically possible or just glorified campfire myths, like ancient steppe flexing. Still, it fits the broader pattern, because to the Mongols, movement was sacred. Stopping too long invited weakness. Sleeping while upright, while riding, well, that was just another form of armor. You finally dismount. Your knees buckle in protest, your hips click like castanets, and your back makes a noise that should require a permit. But you don't complain. That's part of the pact. You drop down beside the stream, fill your hands with water, splash your face, and squint at the sky. Nearby, someone sings softly. You can't place the tune. Minor scale, melancholy. Probably about a horse that did something noble and then died dramatically. Most songs are, honestly. Mongol music isn't about happy endings. It's about movement, memory, and the occasional romantic tragedy involving an eagle. You eat a little, dry mutton jerky, chewy as old rope, but weirdly satisfying. Mongols didn't cook much on the road. Fire gives away your position. So most meals were dried, smoked, or cured beyond recognition. Fun fact: one common snack was dried curds, called arul, so tough you could crack a tooth on them. Think of them as yogurt-flavored rocks that you suck on while contemplating the universe. Back on your feet, you run your fingers along the horse's mane. It's coarse, tangled, flecked with burrs, still beautiful, Mongols had immense respect for their horses, even believed some had spirits. Horses were named, mourned, sometimes even buried ceremonially. And yet, they were also milked, occasionally eaten, and occasionally sung to while drunk. It's complicated. You remember a tale told by your riding partner last night? Something about a famous Mongol general who could nap during battle prep, completely upright, fully armored with birds nesting in his helmet. Exaggerated? Absolutely. But there's a nugget of truth in every absurdity. Because the trick to sleeping standing up wasn't just about the saddle or the horse's pace. It was about training your body into stillness and your mind into vigilance. Some warriors would practice for years, learning to balance muscle memory and partial consciousness. You slept, yes, but with one eye open in your brain. Dreams became functional. Rest became tactical. And there's another layer, one the historians rarely dwell on. Sleep in Mongol tradition wasn't just rest, it was spiritual territory. Shamans believed dreams could offer warnings, visions, or even guidance in battle. A warrior who learned to sleep in motion wasn't just resting, they were communing, skimming the edge between this world and the next. You've been out here long enough now to believe it. Not because you've seen anything supernatural, but because you felt the shift. That subtle buzz when your mind detaches from your body, when your limbs move from memory and your spirit just drifts. Half here, half somewhere else. You stand again, stretch, and mount your horse in one fluid motion. Okay, 2 motions. The first one didn't go great. Your legs grip the saddle automatically. You find the rhythm. The horse walks, you sway. And again, the drowsiness creeps in. Not like exhaustion, but like a warm tide. You let it happen. Around you, the caravan begins to move again, slow and steady, like a glacier with better hair. A few riders are already dozing, their heads bobbing gently, mouths slack. One is muttering something, maybe a song, maybe a prayer. Another is chewing something that smells suspiciously like fermented goat root. And you? You close your eyes just a bit, letting the sun warm your cheek and the saddle cradle your spine. There's an art to this, a surrender. A muscle memory so deep, it starts to feel like instinct. You're part of a machine now, a living one, full of dust, sweat, breath, and stories. And as the valley recedes behind you, replaced once more by open plain, you think maybe, just maybe, you could do this forever. You're starting to lose track of time. Not in the terrifying, what century is it? kind of way. More in the cozy, weightless sense where the hours blur into each other, like watercolors bleeding through handmade paper. Morning stretches into noon, then slips toward evening without ceremony. Your shadow grows long, then disappears beneath you, and still you ride. The horizon hums. You've come to know that particular sound, that illusion of silence that only happens when the wind stops chasing itself across the steppe. It's a kind of stillness that feels alive. You feel it in your shoulders, your knees, your ribs. And tonight, you learn a new lesson. Not all rest involves stopping, because now, as the sun begins to flirt with the western rim of the world, the column of riders changes formation. They slow, but don't stop. Horses spread slightly apart, spacing in a rhythm that feels deliberate. And you notice it. The swaying begins. A kind of synchronized loosening, as if everyone's bones are softening at once. This apparently is nap o'clock, because now, as the sun begins to flirt with the western rim of the world, the column of riders changes formation. They slow but don't stop. Horses spread slightly apart, spacing in a rhythm that feels deliberate. And you notice it. The swaying begins. A kind of synchronized loosening, as if everyone's bones are softening at once. This apparently is nap o'clock. You look to your left. The guy who hasn't spoken since daybreak is fast asleep, still in the saddle, hands loose, head tilted back like he's watching a cloud opera. His horse is perfectly calm, pacing forward as if on autopilot. It's uncanny. You look right. Same thing. You're surrounded by unconscious nomads on autopilot mounts. It's like a mobile slumber party hosted by a warrior cult. You blink, unsure if you're hallucinating. But no, this is real. And here's the secret you haven't cracked until now. They've trained the horses to move like this, slow, deliberate lullaby pace. Mongol horses weren't just battle partners. They were living hammocks. The trick is in the gait. Mongol ponies are small but ridiculously tough, with a natural ambling stride that doesn't jolt you awake every few seconds. Some historians still argue whether these ponies evolved to mimic this nap pace, or if centuries of gentle correction and reward did the trick. Either way, the result is the same. Perfect rockabye rhythm for dozing warriors. You try it. You breathe out slowly, slacken your spine, and trust the leather beneath you. Your horse senses the shift in your muscles and adjusts its step. How does it know? It's like cuddling with a furry metronome. You close your eyes for just a moment, then wake up with a snort. Not your most graceful moment. But hey, no one saw. Unless you count the falcon overhead. You start to appreciate how the saddle has morphed into a second skin. These weren't decorative show saddles. They were tools of survival, padded just enough, sculpted to hold the rider's hips in place, with a cantle that supports your lower back as you drift into unconsciousness. Mongol saddles were carved high, both front and rear, almost cradling the body upright. It's part of why you can nap, without slumping into a neck-breaking mess. And the stirrups? They do more than help you ride. They anchor you. You could fall asleep with your feet still locked in them, your knees doing just enough work to signal your horse that you're still there. Plus, the padding in your boots cushions any small jolts. Not much, but enough. Some warriors even tuck tufts of wool inside to make them more nap-friendly. That's one fringe detail you don't hear in documentaries. Combat boots doubling as orthopedic sleepwear. And then there's the music. It drifts in slowly like mist creeping through the grass. Someone ahead of you has begun to sing. It's a low droning melody, part chant, part lullaby, part ancient GPS system. Songs like these served multiple purposes: entertainment, prayer, communication, and sometimes as paces for the horses. Yes, really. Some believe the rhythm of these traveling songs helped regulate a horse's gait, encouraging that perfect nap speed. Others argue it was more about calming the humans. Either way, you find yourself humming along before you even realize it. The tune coils around you, soft and circular, like a spoken charm. You're not entirely awake, not entirely asleep. You float. The saddle rocks. Your fingers stay curled in the reins, but loosely now, like they've joined the song too. In this suspended state, memories drift in and out. You recall a campfire story from 2 nights ago, told by a grizzled elder who wore more scars than fabric. He claimed to have once napped, standing up during a thunderstorm, lightning splitting trees beside him, his horse totally unfazed. Because fear, he said, tapping his temple, is for those who don't trust their horse. That's probably not true, but it sounds right. And in this culture, sounding right is half the job. Speaking of storms, you feel one brewing. The wind changes first, sharper, more deliberate. Horses flick their ears. You open one eye just in time to see clouds thickening on the far side of the plain, churning like dark batter in a massive sky bowl. The group doesn't panic, they just adjust. Slight leftward curve, faster pace, minimal chatter. This too is part of the rhythm. You tighten your scarf, blink away the dust, and brace for the chill. Mongol clothing was designed for exactly this: unpredictability. Layered wool, flexible trousers, thick boots, light enough for movement, warm enough for sleep, especially in the saddle. And yes, people really did sleep through storms this way, or so the stories say. One legend tells of a warrior who rode 3 days through a blizzard, waking only to eat frozen meat he thawed under his armpit. That's either extreme adaptation or extreme exaggeration. Historians still argue whether this man even existed, let alone his meat pocket. The wind tugs at your cloak. Your horse keeps a steady rhythm, hooves muffled by the newly damp earth. You pass through the first curtain of rain like it's nothing, misty and polite. A welcome coolness. And then, nothing. The storm breaks apart almost instantly, the clouds peeling back like theatre curtains. You blink again, and sunlight slices through, sudden and golden. It hits your cheek, warm. You yawn, a full body sigh, and let your postures sag again. The world tilts just slightly, like the beginning of a dream. You're not sure if you actually sleep this time, or if you just drift. But either way, you emerge from it smiling, because tonight, you finally understand. Sleeping upright isn't just a trick or a skill. It's a pact. Between rider and horse, between exhaustion and trust, between fear and peace. And somehow, with the reins loose in your fingers and the song still echoing low across the steppe, you feel safe enough to let go. The night wraps around you like thick velvet, cooling your skin as the sun vanishes completely behind the distant folds of the hills. You don't dismount. No one does. The horses keep their slow, methodical rhythm, hooves whispering against the dirt, tails swishing like metronomes. Somewhere in the back of your sleepy brain, you realize this journey doesn't stop when the sky goes dark. It just softens. You thought traveling by day was strange, but this is dream logic made real. Because now the Mongol column becomes something else entirely. A shadow caravan, a silent river of bone-weary warriors drifting through the night in half-sleep, half-alert trance. The stars blink on, one, then dozens, then hundreds. Your eyes track a few lazily before they blur into streaks. Or maybe that's your imagination. Who can say? You start to hear it again, the singing. Fainter than before, softer now. Not even a full melody, just scattered threads of tone stitched into the silence. Someone near the rear hums a lullaby you don't recognize. And you won't find it on Spotify either. This is a cradle song for grown men who've speared enemies before breakfast and still miss their mothers. You hum along anyway. Here's the wild part. This nocturnal pace isn't just a necessity, it's a tactic. Mainstream historians agree. Mongol units could cover more ground by traveling at night, sleeping in short bursts while riding, conserving energy without losing momentum. One general supposedly claimed he could reach any point in Asia faster than a letter. And yeah, that's mostly because his troops could nap without ever stopping. Of course, there's an open scholarly debate over whether full REM sleep happened on horseback. Some argue what the warriors actually did was more like micro-sleep. Those tiny 15-second blackouts your brain sneaks in when you're exhausted but upright. Others insist they achieved light stage sleep, the kind where you're technically unconscious but still twitchy enough to dodge a thrown apple. Either way, they made it work. The results speak for themselves. Cities taken, empires broken, naps enjoyed. But the idea of sleeping upright still messes with your modern instincts. Your back protests, your hips ache a little, even your brain, spoiled by spring mattresses and blackout curtains, is like, excuse me, where's my memory foam? You try shifting your weight slightly, and your horse adjusts again. The two of you are getting better at this. You're becoming partners, not quite friends, but certainly co-workers in the great corporation of survival. You wonder what kind of training went into this. How does a horse learn to stay calm when its rider slumps against its neck mid-snore? Turns out, Mongol horses were broken in young. Not broken in the aggressive Western sense, but introduced early to human behavior. They grew up under the weight of riders surrounded by chaos, trained to keep moving even if the human up top stopped functioning. There's one odd tidbit that comes to mind. Something you overheard in camp, from a soldier chewing dried goat meat like it owed him money. He swore that some horses were trained to recognize snoring patterns. If a rider's breathing changed too much, the horse would gently nudge its head, waking them up. Is that true? Who knows? But it's the kind of detail that feels true. That's the secret to good folklore. Believability, wrapped in just enough absurdity. You slump again, adjusting your arms inside your coat, and feel your body give up a little more control. There's a brief jolt. You've started dreaming with your eyes open. The landscape flickers, like a half-finished painting. The grass isn't grass anymore. It's hair. The moon has too many teeth. But then your horse stumbles slightly, and your senses snap back. Not danger, just a pebble. Still, it reminds you, this nap isn't without risk. Falling from a horse is bad. Falling asleep and then falling from a horse. Embarrassing and painful. So the Mongols, being practical, developed a few safety hacks. One was a leather loop tied loosely around the waist and hooked to the saddle, like a very medieval seatbelt. Another trick was training the body to grip with the knees unconsciously, even during sleep. Yes, there are Mongol lullabies that allegedly included rhythms to reinforce this muscle memory. Modern scientists aren't quite sure whether those knee clenchers were really effective or just a placebo in musical form. But one anthropologist theorized that long-term riders developed a form of proprioceptive sleep, where your body stays balanced even without full awareness. Like a cat napping on a fence, or a student sleeping through math class but still turning the page on time. You reach for your water skin and sip automatically. The movement's fluid now, one-handed, quiet, unfazed. It's strange how competent you've become in this dream world. Like sleep has sharpened, not dulled you. The mind may be foggy, but the body remembers. A shape appears ahead, dark, wide, unmoving. You blink through the half-dark and realize it's not a boulder. It's a yurt. A single family's camp, tucked into a windbreak near a dry riverbed. Smoke drifts up from the chimney hole, lit faintly from within. You catch the golden pulse of a hearth and hear a baby crying. For a second, you imagine stepping inside, curling up beside that warmth, trading stories for soup, but no one veers toward it. You keep moving, because the ride doesn't stop just because comfort shows up. That's the Mongol way. Sleep is something you take with you, not somewhere you go. As the night deepens, the line of riders starts to breathe together. Literally, You hear it, a kind of shared rhythm in the exhale, the snort of the horses, the almost inaudible snores that drift backward on the breeze. You're part of something ancient now, something that moves across continents, not by day, but by will, by muscle memory, by the dreams of men who conquered the world while half asleep. You shift again, settling into a deeper calm, eyes open but unseeing. And as the starlight winks above you like curious gods, you begin to understand the quiet truth at the heart of this journey. To ride with the Mongols is to ride with your eyes closed, trusting the path, the beast, and the bones beneath you. Somewhere between your last blink and this exact moment, the air has cooled even further. Not frigid, just enough to encourage a deeper exhale. Your breath fogs a little. It floats upward and joins the barely visible clouds forming above the open steppe. You don't notice at first that you've started swaying, not just with the horse's gait, but in that specific floppy rhythm that says this person is deeply asleep but still vertical. Congrats, you've officially gone full Mongol. You hear a snort, yours or the horse's, unclear, and your body stiffens reflexively, righting itself. The fact that you didn't faceplant into the dirt is kind of amazing, but also expected. This isn't your first 20-mile night stretch. Not anymore. You're syncing up. Mongol warriors, the actual historical ones, weren't just tough, they were rhythmic. Their lives moved to cycles of hoof beats, hunger pangs, moon phases, and battlefield drums. Scholars still argue whether this rhythm was a conscious psychological training or an emergent behavior from growing up on horseback. Either way, it explains how they could sleep standing, or rather, sleep riding, without tumbling into a gopher hole. Let's be honest, your modern posture is nowhere near as optimized. Slouching at your desk, watching YouTube videos about Mongol sleep hacks doesn't exactly prep your spine for equestrian elegance. But here, in this dreamy reconstruction, your body figures it out. Gradually, creakily, one vertebra at a time. Ahead, the column slows, not quite stopping. You follow suit. The terrain dips here, gently rolling downward into a low basin. It's not a rest break, it's a pace adjustment. The horses instinctively shorten their stride. You feel it in your ankles and knees first. The muscles that have been doing a low-key isometric workout all night finally get a moment of relief. Bless. A man to your left mumbles something in his sleep. Could be a prayer. Could be his grocery list. You'll never know. He doesn't wake, though his horse angles slightly to avoid a patch of rocky ground. They are fused, these two. One biological centaur gliding through darkness and dream. There's a fringe theory, half folk tale, half speculative anthropology, that certain elite Mongol scouts developed lucid sleep riding. Like lucid dreaming, but instead of flying through clouds or eating endless pizza, they could navigate terrain in a semi-dreaming trance. They'd sleep, but remain aware of distance, light patterns, even enemy movement. Most historians roll their eyes at that one, but you've got to admit, it feels right. You close your eyes briefly, just a test. Your balance holds. Your ears pick up more now, the hush of fur saddle coverings, the chink of stirrups, a whip paw wheel in the far distance. There's a lot of trust at play here, not just in your horse, but in the collective. If anyone veers off, everyone suffers. So the riders maintain their lanes, even in sleep. Like a nighttime highway without painted lines. The grass whispers underhoof. Dry wind combs through it lazily, rustling the stalks in patterns only your half-awake mind notices. You think of them as messages. nature's bedtime murmurs. In reality, it's just wind. But your brain, desperate for softness, romanticizes everything after 2 a.m. You pass another silent homestead, a cluster of yurts. One flickers with lamplight. You catch a glimpse of someone sitting cross-legged inside, sipping from a bowl. They glance out as you pass. Do they see you? Or are you the dream? Now you're descending into a shallower ravine. Your horse slows slightly, careful on the slope. You realize you haven't thought about directing it in nearly half an hour. It just knows, like it's got ways but for hooves. This stretch of land, where grass gives way to sandy loam, would have once been filled with wild gazelles, scuttling hedgehogs, maybe even the odd desert fox. At night, though, they vanish. Or maybe they pause and stare at the Mongols drifting past, wondering if these creatures are ghosts. You lean forward slightly, letting your weight shift into the saddle horn. It's padded with leather and wool, a mix designed not just for comfort, but for subtle sleep support. Modern saddle designers have literally studied these ancient designs to make long-distance trail saddles more humane. But the truth is, nothing beats centuries of trial and error field testing by an empire on horseback. You feel it again, that flutter of near sleep. Your brain is a dimmed room now, furniture draped in sheets, motion slowed. Memory blends with imagination. You could swear you just saw your childhood bedroom in the reflection of a puddle. That's fine. The Mongols would understand. They believed the steppe had a spirit, a whispering intelligence that spoke best when you were too tired to question it. Suddenly, you hear a low, echoing thud. Not dangerous, just strange. You open one eye a bit wider. A rider ahead has dropped something. Maybe a cup, maybe his entire sense of direction. But he doesn't stop. No one does. The object will be swallowed by darkness, forgotten before sunrise. That's how it works here. The steppe takes things. It also gives, just not always in that order. You reach up and adjust your hat. Wait, when did you get a hat? No idea, but it's furry and warm and smells like sheep. Another dream prop? You roll with it. Better not to ask too many questions when your conscious brain is running on fumes. It hits you that you haven't spoken aloud in hours, not even a grunt. That's normal in this world. Mongol night, riding was about silence, preservation, minimal waste. Some claim there were nights where entire units rode for 12 hours straight without a single word exchanged. Just gestures, looks, the occasional sneeze. Silence was tactical and spiritual. There's an argument among military historians about whether this sleep-riding strategy was more psychological than practical. Some argue it created an illusion of unstoppable movement. An army that didn't rest, didn't pause, didn't even breathe in the normal way. Like a ghost wall rolling toward your city gates. Others say it was mostly about efficiency. Keep your warriors moving, use every moment, and let the rest of the world be lazy in comparison. Either way, it worked. Your horse slows even more. The incline steepening. It's a short climb now, probably up onto another plateau. You brace automatically, tightening your knees slightly, leaning forward. The transition from micro-sleep to alertness takes only a breath now. You're becoming like them. Alert, asleep, then alert again, all without the ceremony of waking. Your stomach growls, a polite reminder that naps don't replace meals. Somewhere tucked in your saddlebag, there's fermented mare's milk and a dried cheese snack that looks like someone mummified a marshmallow. Not exactly 5 stars, but it's fuel. You make a mental note to eat it at the next long halt, which could be in 5 minutes or 5 days. Time is weird now, and so you ride on, somewhere between rest and readiness, suspended in a world that doesn't need punctuation marks. The kind of world where dreams don't end, they just change scenery. Where battle-hardened warriors can sleep standing, because rest isn't about lying down. It's about trusting the earth to keep turning while your eyes drift shut. The stars overhead haven't moved much, but your sense of time has. It bends a little, creaking at the edges like old leather. You blink, and another hour seems to slip by, evaporating like dew on a saddle horn. There's no sunrise yet, just more of that gentle, eerie twilight Mongol riders knew so well. What they called the wolf light. Not quite night, not quite day, perfect for ghosts and warriors and people who can fall asleep mid-canter. You tug gently on the reins, not because the horse needs direction. It doesn't. You just need to do something with your hands to remind yourself that you still exist. Your fingers feel stiff, not numb, but like they've forgotten how to type or hold a fork. You wiggle them. A few joints crack. The sound echoes way louder than expected. For a moment, you imagine you've broken the entire silence of the steppe. But nope, the world keeps spinning. And speaking of spinning, let's talk about that saddle. It's not just your butt's best friend. It's your bed, your chair, and sometimes your emergency table. A traditional Mongol saddle looks nothing like the soft leather recliners most Western riders know. It's high in front and back, almost throne-like, carved from wood, and padded just enough to avoid absolute agony. It holds you upright, even when you nod off. Smart design. Also, incredibly painful until your body gives in and molds itself around the thing, like clay left in the sun. You feel a low grumble in your hip. Could be a complaint. Could be your body saying, hey, remember when we used to sleep horizontally? Good times, but there's something else that happens. Something subtle. Your posture, against all odds, improves. You stop slouching. Your back straightens. Not like a ballet dancer, but like someone who must hold themselves tall or risk falling into a ditch. You're locked in now. Core muscles engaged. Spine alert. Somewhere, your yoga instructor just wept with joy. There's a rhythm to your fatigue too. You don't fight it anymore. You flow with it. Mongol warriors called this kind of movement uns hurak, moving sleep. You ride, you sleep, you wake, you eat, all while in motion. Like being in a dream that never hits pause. Scholars still debate whether this was an intentional training method passed down generationally, or simply a survival tactic that became cultural dogma. Maybe both, but clearly it worked. You're proof. Now your eyes close again, this time on purpose. You're testing the line between safety and surrender. And weirdly, it's kind of exhilarating, like napping on a roller coaster. You let yourself lean a fraction to the left, just enough to feel that tilt, that slack muscle warning, but not enough to tip. Your horse adjusts. A shift in its ribs, a minor course correction. You don't even open your eyes, you just know. And in that moment, you get it. The trust, the partnership. This isn't riding a vehicle. This is dancing with another living being that knows your weight, your smell, your sleep patterns. Mongol horses weren't just transport. They were colleagues, extensions of their riders. Low maintenance, durable, emotionally unflappable colleagues who could probably do your taxes if you asked nicely. They were also arguably the secret weapon of the Mongol war machine. Tough, short and stocky, built less for speed, more for resilience. They could survive in brutal cold, find food under snow, and drink once every couple of days. Some historians still argue whether these horses were selectively bred over centuries, or whether the conditions of the steppes simply forged them through natural selection. Either way, these horses were as much a part of the empire as Genghis Khan himself. Your horse coughs softly. You glance down and realize you've been drooling slightly. Elegant, very imperial. You wipe your mouth with a gloved hand and laugh under your breath. Mongol warriors probably did it too. It's not like sleep riding is glamorous. It's just useful, functional, and occasionally very damp. A small break in the clouds lets moonlight spill across the hills. You can suddenly see the whole column more clearly. Riders bobbing gently in the same rhythm, some half asleep, others wide-eyed, scanning the horizon. A few are humming low tunes, not songs exactly, more like throat-vibrating mantras designed to keep the mind in a sleepy but alert state. You try humming too. It feels weirdly grounding, like tuning your brain to the same frequency as the horse. You wonder what dreams these warriors had. Did they see the faces of the cities they'd later conquer? Did they dream of home, of endless steppe? Or were their dreams just silent, blank screens filled with wind and dust and the occasional startled sheep? There's no way to know. Mongol diaries weren't exactly filled with dream analysis. But your guess? Their subconscious looked a lot like their waking life. Just a bit softer around the edges. Ahead, the terrain shifts again. A narrow trail now, flanked by rocks, less grass. Your horse slows instinctively, hooves picking a careful route. You lean into the curve, half dreaming of sea serpents and felt boots, and then you snap awake. Just for a second. A breeze cuts across your cheek. Sharp, clean, almost surgical. You breathe in and realize this is what it means to be inside history, because no one teaches you this part in school. That history isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a long ride at night with your eyes half shut and your butt half asleep, and your senses whispering, keep going. You're part of the story now, and so you do. You keep going. You pass a skeleton. Well, not a scary one. It's an old horse skull, half buried in the dust, bleached white and noble looking, like it died mid-stride and just decided to stay there. You nod at it. Respect. Then roll on. One of the riders beside you sneezes so violently that his helmet shifts. No one laughs. But someone mutters something that sounds suspiciously like a steppe language version of bless you. Community etiquette, still enforced, even in mobile nap time. And now you can feel it in your muscles. You're adapting. The ache's still there, but it's quieter now. Your thighs don't protest every shift in saddle pressure. Your back complains in lower volume. Your hands rest easier on the reins. Your whole body has entered a weird, blurry harmony. Mongol warrior sleep mode, unlocked. You catch sight of a star that wasn't there before. Or maybe it was. But now it's brighter, pulsing slightly. It looks like it's moving. Or maybe that's just your eyelids drooping again. You're never sure out here. Nothing stays fixed. Except the rhythm. Except you. The night breathes around you like a sleepy animal, exhaling in long, cool drafts that ripple through the grass and sneak under your collar. Your eyes open and close at irregular intervals now. Not with panic, but a strange kind of confidence. You're used to the motion, the creak of leather, the steady beat of hooves, the gentle sway that feels less like a jolt and more like a lullaby. You could probably drift off mid-battle at this point if the arrows weren't so rude about it. The Mongol warriors beside you ride in that same serene trance. Not exactly asleep, not exactly awake, just suspended. And somehow that's the magic. They weren't just surviving sleep on horseback. They were optimizing it. Over time, their bodies learned the shortcuts. Their minds found ways to snag 10-minute power naps between bursts of alertness. Like some ancient, terrifying form of polyphasic sleep. Now you adjust your weight ever so slightly, leaning into the high wooden lip at the back of your saddle. That curved board isn't just decorative, it's a functional brace, one that lets your body rest without collapsing. It's carved from dense wood, often wrapped in hide, and if you squint, it looks more like a weird ergonomic chair than anything in a modern stable. It's a little like sleeping with a bony hand pushing against your spine, but it works. Somehow, your horse hits a patch of loose stones and skids ever so slightly. Your eyes flash open, reflexes ready, and you notice your legs automatically tightening around the saddle. You don't even think about it. Your body reacts on instinct, stabilizing itself without waking up fully. You've officially crossed into the territory where muscle memory becomes your co-pilot. Mongol warriors trained from childhood for this. But hey, look at you. Historians still argue whether this ability to sleep standing or riding was a learned tactic developed over years of war campaigns, or a culturally ingrained adaptation from living on horseback since toddlerhood. Either way, the results were impressive. Warriors could ride for days, pushing deep into enemy lands, sleeping in tiny bursts without dismounting. Their stamina was the stuff of nightmares. For their enemies, anyway. There's a soft sound ahead. A rider humming again, but this time it's higher pitched. A thin note that wavers in the air like smoke. You can't tell if it's a melody or a signal. Either way, it seems to match your heartbeat. It draws you forward into something deeper than just nightfall. You remember reading once that Mongol horses were trained to respond to vocal cues, even certain songs. Not like Alexa, gallop, but still, there was communication. Tone mattered. Intention mattered. The horse knew if you were scared or tired or bleeding slightly. They say a good Mongol mount could feel your fear before you did. And just between us, your horse might be the only one right now who knows how deeply tired you are. The riders begin to descend into a shallow valley now, the air growing damper and heavier, tinged with the earthy scent of riverbed mud. There's no visible stream, but your horse's ears twitch forward. It senses water. Somewhere in the dark, the land softens, and your mount shifts to a more cautious pace. Each hoof sinks a little deeper into the soil. The vibration beneath you dulls. The rhythm changes. Your body adapts again without asking. The group slows slightly. Not to rest, just to recalibrate. And that's the thing about this sleep on the move strategy. It wasn't about laziness or taking shortcuts. It was a tactical response to the reality of steppe warfare. No supply lines, no inns, no time. If you could sleep in motion, you could conquer faster. You could outpace enemies who needed to stop. Rest became a luxury you didn't wait for. You folded it into your movement like a secret ingredient. There's a story, likely half myth, that Genghis Khan once rode for 7 days straight, sleeping only in 5-minute increments while upright. And when he finally dismounted, he collapsed without a word and slept for 20 hours flat. Whether or not it's true, you get the point. The image is burned into history. Warriors too tough, too busy, too driven to lie down like normal people. And yet, there's something oddly peaceful about it. This isn't brute force. This is harmony. Between you and your horse, between fatigue and function. You no longer fight sleep. You wear it like a cloak, shedding it when you need to focus, wrapping it tighter when the terrain evens out. Your head dips again. The world narrows to the feel of coarse horsehair against your legs, the whisper of wool from your saddle blanket, the soft exhale of breath from your nostrils. You're somewhere between now and then, between the 21st century and the 13th, between Netflix and nomads. A bump in the path jolts you, but not entirely. You sway and recover, your eyes opening just enough to note the silhouette of a nearby rider whose helmet is hilariously crooked. You consider fixing it, but the thought drifts off halfway. Another joke lost to the night. You pass a rock shaped suspiciously like a sleeping goat. You name it Fred. It will be your landmark if you ever circle back this way. Unlikely, but never say never. Mongol warriors often loop their routes in vast spirals, strategic deception, making it harder for enemies to predict movement. Some historians say these long spiraling rides actually helped them sleep better. Others argue it made orientation harder, and only the horses truly knew where they were going. Who's to say? You reach the top of a low ridge and see the sky open wider. Stars like sugar, scattered and glowing. Your breath fogs a little. Colder now. You pull your cloak tighter and settle in again, letting the horse take the lead. You trust it. Probably more than most humans you know. After all, it hasn't once tried to check your phone notifications. Somewhere behind you, someone sneezes again. You smirk. It's the same guy. Definitely a cold. No tissues in the saddlebag, just dignity and a handful of dried milk curds. You offer him a silent thumbs up, which is of course invisible in the dark. But it's the thought that counts. Ahead, the terrain levels. The horses resume their gentle rhythm. You feel your pulse slow. You feel your shoulders drop just a fraction. You're not quite asleep, but you're close. Just on the edge of that soft place, where the brain loosens its grip and hands the reins over to something older, quieter, steadier. Like your horse. Like the steppe, like a history that rides beside you, waiting to whisper something when you're ready to hear it. The hours slip by, marked only by the changing tone of the wind. It whistles softer now, like a lullaby played on a reed flute, curling around your ears and loosening whatever tension is left in your shoulders. You're no longer fully awake, not really asleep either. It's a sweet little in-between. The twilight zone of the Mongol warrior's rest. You blink slowly. The grasslands are shifting under starlight, stretching endlessly toward the edge of the world. Your horse continues without hesitation, its hooves beating out a rhythm so familiar it almost blends into the background, like the ticking of a bedroom clock. Comforting, predictable, ancient. Ahead, the riders begin to space out more, as if they've entered a zone where conversation is no longer necessary, where silence becomes its own form of respect. You adjust your reins ever so slightly. Your fingers ache a little, but not enough to make you complain. A bit of callous, a bit of cold, a bit of that Mongol-style resilience you're slowly cultivating, hour by hour. There's a story that some Mongol warriors could sleep while still holding their bows. Not ready to fire, let's not get dramatic, but cradling them as a reflex. A kind of comfort object. Scholars still argue whether this is exaggerated folklore or simply a misunderstood form of battle readiness. Either way, it paints a picture. Sleep not as a retreat, but as preparation. The horse beneath you makes a low snorting sound, ears twitching. You reach down, pat its neck gently. You're not even thinking about the motion anymore. It's just what you do now. One creature looking out for another. You kind of wonder if your horse thinks you're the pet. Wouldn't be surprising, honestly. You round a small bend and come upon a slightly elevated mound where a few of the riders have paused. Not stopped, just hovering, half standing in their stirrups, as if deciding whether this place is good enough for a brief meal break. One of them, wrapped in what must be the world's fluffiest felt cloak, tosses down a dried meat strip and chews slowly without ever removing his hand from the reins. His horse seems equally unimpressed with the break. Nobody dismounts. Rest happens on the saddle or not at all. You pull out a small pouch from your own saddlebag. Inside, a few rock-hard bits of air-dried cheese. Not exactly charcuterie board material, but this is what warriors snacked on while conquering most of Eurasia. Known as kurut, the stuff tastes like salty limestone and has the texture of fossilized regret. Still, you chew thoughtfully, staring up at the sky. The stars seem lower tonight, as if they're leaning in to listen. It's worth noting that the Mongol military didn't just stumble into greatness through brutality. Their brilliance came from discipline, coordination, and yes, efficiency. Sleep was a logistical factor in planning. Some researchers even proposed that Genghis Khan organized patrol rotations based on natural sleep cycles, allowing certain groups to rest while others stayed hyper-alert. Others argue that idea's a modern projection. But hey, imagining a general who cared about circadian rhythms is oddly comforting. Your eyes fall to the horizon, and for the first time tonight, you spot a flicker of orange, firelight, far away but visible. A signal? An enemy camp? Or just some poor shepherd roasting goat ribs and trying not to get conquered? You squint. Too far to worry about. Your horse doesn't seem alarmed, so you don't either. Trust the expert. You nudge your mount forward again, following the soft dip of the path. The group fans out loosely, spreading along the curve of the land like paint on canvas. It's beautiful, in a way that's hard to explain. There's nothing flashy here. No monuments, no lights, no sound beyond hooves and the occasional cough. But everything feels precise, intentional. You wonder about the dreams of the Mongol warriors, if they even remembered them. Could someone really reach REM while swaying like this? One historical record suggests that Mongols had dreamless sleep, especially during campaign months. Maybe the constant motion filtered out the wild narratives, leaving only a blank, restful void. Or maybe they dreamed of grass and hoofbeats and battles yet to come. Your own mind starts to slip. You imagine being wrapped in furs so thick they muffle thought, leaning against a horse trained to read your heartbeat. You imagine a lullaby hummed in a forgotten dialect, one passed down through saddle-sung stories. You imagine yourself not as a tourist in this life, but as someone born to it, raised with one foot in the stirrup and the other in legend. The wind picks up slightly, carrying with it a smell you can't quite place. Charcoal? Oats? A trace of fermented mare's milk? That's right, Erag, the national drink of the steppes. Fermented horse milk, beloved and feared. Supposedly, some warriors would sip a bit before long rides to calm their nerves. Others used it to clean wounds or clear sinuses, or so the stories say. Honestly, it sounds like kombucha's warlike cousin. There's a lull now. The pace slows again. You glance left and notice one rider's head drooping fully, chin nearly resting on his chest. His horse keeps walking, eyes forward, utterly unbothered. It's oddly reassuring to see. Proof that yes, you can sleep upright. Yes, your horse has your back, literally. You let your own eyelids drop for a moment. Just one, then another. The rocking motion is hypnotic. You barely register the moment your mind begins to drift. Somewhere far away, thunder murmurs. Not enough to panic anyone, but enough to remind you that nature still sets the tempo out here. Weather dictated everything on the steppe. Routes, rest, even whether you could build a fire. And during certain times of year, you couldn't even dismount for warmth, lest your boots freeze to the ground. Standing sleep? Safer. Toastier. Less likely to get stuck like a popsicle in a tundra. You smile at the thought. Ice boots. Classic rookie mistake. Your body shifts again as your horse steps over a low root or stone. No panic. Just recalibration. You don't even need to wake up fully. Your body moves without asking permission. And somehow, despite the absurdity, despite the discomfort, despite the fact that you're miles from anywhere cozy, you're relaxed. Some part of your mind finally lets go. You're sleeping standing up, and you are not alone. When you finally blink yourself halfway back into awareness, you've traveled farther than you thought. The stars have rotated, the horizon's edge now rimmed in the faintest suggestion of light, a cool grey that hints at morning but doesn't commit to it. And somehow, your legs haven't given out. Your horse plods along steady as always, like you're just one more sack of onions on its back. There's a crick in your neck, but you'll take it. Could have been worse. You could have fallen off, rolled into a prickly bush, and become a footnote in some obscure chronicle. Unnamed rider failed to sleep effectively on horseback. Very embarrassing. Instead, you stayed upright. Mongol style. Your riding group, if you can call it that, starts to shift again. Tightening formation. Picking up a little speed. It's not a charge, just a purposeful movement. Ahead lies a distant cluster of hills, low and dry, the kind of place you could hide 100 warriors and still have room for their goats. You follow instinctively, trusting the path, trusting your mount, and trusting the growing sense of momentum. A few centuries ago, these hills could have been part of a major maneuver. The Mongol war machine, once set in motion, could roll across entire kingdoms with terrifying ease. And part of that efficiency, the ability to move at night, the ability to sleep en route. No campfires, no tents, just a warrior, his horse, and the vast blank canvas of the earth. You shift slightly in your saddle and dig out a dried apricot, shriveled, sticky, and deeply underrated. Apparently, Mongol warriors favored them too. They believed the fruit restored energy and sharpened vision, which might be why your blurry eyeballs feel just a little more focused after the first bite. Or maybe it's just sugar. Either way, victory. Your horse blows a soft sigh, as if sharing in your little breakfast moment. Then you hear a low hum. Not from an instrument, no one's playing music out here, but from a voice, just one. Singing something old, something wordless, a kind of tone poem stretched across the chilly air. It's one of the older riders, his face mostly hidden by layers of felt and wool. His eyes stay forward, but the song slips free anyway. You can't make out any lyrics, and maybe there aren't any, just long vowels, soft and steady, the kind of sound that rocks your spine into alignment and convinces you that maybe, just maybe, everything's going to be fine. Historians still argue whether Mongol warriors carried personal lullabies passed down by clan elders, or whether communal chants were more for battle hype. than bedtime. But this tune, this is no war cry. This is a comfort song, half lullaby, half compass. Something to keep your mind tethered while your body stays mobile. You hum along under your breath, guessing at the notes, letting your voice blend into the landscape like a thread in a larger tapestry. And that's when you see the bones. Just a few, bleached white, tucked between some rocky outcroppings. A rib cage, maybe part of a skull. Nothing gruesome. This isn't a horror story, but definitely enough to make your horse slow and sniff. Could have been a wolf kill. Could have been a casualty of weather. Could have been someone like you who simply didn't get back up one morning. It's weird how calmly you accept this. Maybe because you're too tired to be alarmed. Maybe because life and death on the steppe were never neatly separated. They blurred together like dust and sweat. You ride past the bones, the way you'd ride past a forgotten mitten on a sidewalk. Not with disrespect, just a kind of worn-out reverence, a nod to whoever they once were. The group begins to climb the low ridge ahead, the pace deliberate but still fluid. Your thighs burn a little with the angle, but it's a welcome sensation, something alive and real. At the top of the hill, the view opens. Below, a small encampment sleeps in silence, tucked into the natural bowl of the terrain. No torches, just the faintest glow of ash beneath a cooking pot. Someone was here recently. You're not meant to go down, not yet. The riders with you pause, surveying the landscape like hawks on a thermal. Nobody speaks, but the sense of mutual understanding is strong. You're waiting, letting others rest before you do. Maybe in 10 minutes, maybe in 2 hours, someone will nod, and the group will peel off into shifts. This was a core part of Mongol strategy, rotational rest. Not everyone needed to be asleep at once, just enough to keep the momentum going. It's said that entire divisions operated like finely tuned gears, napping in waves, riding in relays. Almost like a 13th century version of polyphasic sleep, but with more arrows and less Reddit discussion. A soft cough breaks the stillness. One of the younger riders tries to stifle it, but it echoes anyway. The elder, yes, the humming one, gives him a sharp glance, then pulls a cloth from his pouch and hands it over. Wrapped inside? Dried herbs and crushed bark. Steppe medicine. Smells like a mix of pine and licorice, and something suspiciously goat adjacent. You wrinkle your nose from a distance. The kid eats it anyway. Fringe tidbit of the day. Some Mongol warriors believe sleeping too long could weaken your spirit. They'd nap in short bursts, always ready to fight, flee, or simply shift their position for better feng shui. Not kidding, sleep angles mattered. North-facing heads, for instance, were said to bring clearer dreams. West-facing? Not so much. You let your horse circle a bit, adjusting your heading, just in case. No harm in chasing dream clarity. The song fades. The sky brightens by degrees. You're still swaying, still sore, but you've crossed a threshold. This isn't just imitation anymore. You're not playing Mongol. You're starting to understand what it feels like to live it. Not glamorous, not epic in the Instagram sense, but profoundly efficient, minimalist, intimate. The group begins to descend toward the camp, not hurriedly, not all at once, just like mist rolling down a hill, inevitable, quiet, oddly elegant. You follow. The wind eases up. Your breath syncs with your horses. For once, you're not thinking about sleep. You're living it. In motion. Upright. Entirely Mongol. As the descent flattens out into the bowl of the valley, your bones finally start to register the strain. Not a sharp pain, just the low, dragging kind of fatigue that settles behind your knees and under your eyes like unwanted guests who've made themselves a little too comfortable. Your fingers flex instinctively, gripping the reins not out of necessity but out of habit. At this point, your horse might be more awake than you. The camp lies ahead like a mirage made solid. No grand pavilions or fluttering banners here. Just lean shapes huddled against each other. Small sleeping rolls, saddle bundles, maybe a few heads peeking out from under thick cloaks. It's not quiet because everyone's asleep. It's quiet because no one needs to speak. They're synced, like gears turning slowly in a machine that doesn't break. You're not expected to dismount. Mongol warriors often didn't, especially if they were only stopping for a bit of shut-eye. Why waste energy setting up camp when your saddle is already molded to your spine and your horse's heartbeat is basically a lullaby? You guide your steed to a still spot beside a knotted bush and shift your weight just enough to let your legs hang free. You're still technically upright, but your soul is sliding somewhere horizontal. Now here's where things get strange. You're not just exhausted, you're also a little euphoric. That loopy state where your thoughts slow down, but your imagination speeds up. A sleepy soup of half-dream bubbles up behind your eyelids. And just for a second, the camp becomes something else. You picture the warriors around you not as men on a campaign, but as shadows cast by firelight flickering against the walls of some massive invisible tent. Historians still argue whether Mongol warriors intentionally trained for this kind of hallucination-like sleep, or whether it was simply a byproduct of the lifestyle. Constant movement, thin air, odd hours. Either way, you feel it now. You're on the edge of reality, and it's honestly kind of soothing. You slump just a little lower in your saddle, chin sinking toward your chest. Your horse shifts, adjusting its stance so you can lean without tipping. There's a kind of practiced choreography to this, a trust that's hard-earned. Mongol warriors didn't just ride horses. They grew up with them, practically lived inside them. There are stories of boys learning to balance on a galloping horse's back before they could even write their own names. The quirky detail? Some warriors reportedly trained to nap, standing by balancing eggs on their heads. Drop one, you wake up. Don't drop one. Congrats, you're nap certified. It sounds ridiculous, but after hours in the saddle, with sleep tugging at your limbs, you'd probably agree to just about any training method if it meant 5 minutes of solid unconsciousness. You're not sure how long you rest like this. 10 minutes? 20? Time has gone all melty again. But slowly, the camp begins to shift. One figure moves to check a saddle. Another tightens a strap. Horses nicker softly. A fire is coaxed back to life, not for cooking, but just enough for warmth. You inhale the scent of smoked leather and boiled milk, and it's oddly comforting. You decide to stretch. You roll one shoulder, then the other. A few bones pop. Very anti-epic. Your horse twitches one ear as if to say, "You done?" You scratch its neck in reply. The man closest to you, an older warrior with a face that looks like a topographical map, offers you a piece of dried meat. It's chewy and strange, but you eat it anyway. Mongol warriors often carried jerky-like strips called borts, made from dried mutton. Lightweight, tough, and shelf-stable enough to survive multiple wars. Practicality? Thy name is meat. Another rider, younger and clearly feeling spry, hops onto his saddle and begins circling the camp, singing a sharp, rhythmic tune. It's somewhere between a chant and a signal. Not aggressive, just energizing. Like a Mongol morning alarm clock, minus the snooze button. And here's the beauty of it. Nobody looks particularly refreshed. They're all carrying the same tired eyes, the same dust-caked expressions. But there's a collective understanding. We rested. That's enough. Now we move. You fall in line as the group reforms, each horse nudging forward with purpose. The rhythm of the ride returns like an old melody, hoofbeats syncopated with your breath, the creak of saddles marking time. There's no real destination announced. That wasn't always necessary in Mongol campaigns. Genghis Khan's forces often navigated without maps, relying on memory, landmarks, and an almost mystical awareness of geography. Some scholars believe they even passed down knowledge through oral GPS, songs that encoded the terrain, kind of like Siri, but sung by your grandmother. You crest another hill. The wind picks up again, playing with your sleeves and whispering into your ears. For a moment, you imagine it saying, "You're part of it now." Not a tourist, not an observer, a thread in the ancient fabric. The ride continues, steady and dreamlike. No one asks how long. No one questions when the next break will come. Mongol warriors were known for their extreme endurance, sometimes traveling over 100 miles in a single day. Not because they wanted to, because they could. You feel the ache in your thighs as something noble. You feel the sway of the horse as something familiar. You even begin to crave another bite of that weird licorice goat bark stuff. And then, you feel your eyes drift closed again. Not in surrender, but in partnership. You've mastered the rhythm. You've found that strange pocket of alert rest. And for just a heartbeat or two, you're not just sleeping while riding. You're floating, like mist on the saddle. And there it is. The sky has bled into a dim copper and grey as another long day threatens to either begin or end. You're not sure anymore. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the feeling that settles over your limbs like a second cloak. That same sleepy, lucid peace Mongol warriors must have felt after days of riding, raiding, resting, and riding again. You're still in the saddle, though your posture has slumped even further. At this point, your spine has basically fused with the leather. And yet, you're awake, in that dreamy way, where your body is on autopilot, and your thoughts have wandered somewhere far beyond the horizon. Ahead, you spot a lone rider, a scout maybe, returning with word of the road ahead. His arrival barely causes a stir. Mongols were excellent at reading movement without drama. You feel a subtle ripple go through the group, like fish changing direction in unison. No orders shouted, no flags raised, just an unspoken agreement to veer ever so slightly east. There's a kind of beauty in this coordination. Mongol troops were divided into decimal units, groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 men. And within these, communication often relied more on body language and timing than on bark commands. Historians still argue whether this was the result of Genghis Khan's reforms or just an adaptation to the vast, echo-swallowing steppe. Either way, you're moving now, together and in silence. The wind whistles gently past your ears, not the howling kind that slices your cheeks open. This is a breeze that hums like an old lullaby. It rustles through the grass, flutters the tassels on your saddle, and for a strange moment, sounds almost like distant snoring. Maybe it is snoring. The warrior next to you, eyes barely cracked open, is definitely dozing while upright. You marvel, once again, at the skill it takes to sleep like this. not slumped in a tent, not stretched out under the stars, but standing, or more accurately, sitting tall, in motion, in armor, with your mind floating halfway between vigilance and dreamland. You nudge your horse forward, letting it guide you. Mongol horses were famously autonomous. They could navigate familiar paths without constant rider input, especially if they sensed the rhythm of a herd. In a pinch, you could quite literally pass out in the saddle, and your horse would still get you where you needed to be. It's less like riding a car, more like riding a very large, furry GPS with hooves. And the saddle, don't forget the saddle. Mongol saddles were masterpieces of utility. High-backed and deep-seated, they kept the rider secure and upright. It was like sitting in a supportive armchair strapped to a creature that could sprint 20 miles without a water break. Comfy in the way that only necessity can make something comfy. The quirky bit. Some warriors were said to hang little charms or talismans under the saddle. Horsehair braids, carved bones, bits of iron, to encourage good dreams or ward off back pain. Nothing like sleeping atop your own mobile shrine. You pass a stretch of shallow marsh, where the grass gives way to silvery pools. The horses tread carefully, the mud squelching softly beneath them. Reflections ripple and vanish. You watch your own blurry silhouette distort in the water and wonder for a second if it even looks human anymore. With all the gear, the grime, the wild hair, you could be some mythical creature galloping out of the steppe legends. The sun finally crests the horizon behind you, throwing long shadows across the land. The herd stretches ahead in a sinuous line, dark silhouettes against a golden plain. It's stunning. You blink slowly, yawn once, then again. This time, your sleepiness isn't sharpened by the cold or masked by adrenaline. It's soft, like a blanket pulled over your brain. And here comes the wildest thought of all. You realize genuinely that you don't want to dismount. You've become part of the rhythm. You've absorbed the lull of hooves on soil, the rise and fall of your horse's ribs, the quiet camaraderie of fellow dreamers in motion. It's hypnotic. You understand now why the Mongols did it, not just for efficiency, but because the saddle itself became a second skin, a place to be still even while moving, a place to find rest even when the world refused to stop turning. A cough breaks the silence, not a rude one, just a reminder that you're still here, still awake, sort of. One of the warriors gestures with a half smile and tosses something in your direction. You catch it mid-air, barely, and stare. It's a dried apricot, shriveled, sun-toughened, impossibly sweet. A treat from someone's pack, shared not out of necessity, but out of acknowledgement. You're one of us now. You made it. And as you chew, you let your head rest against your horse's neck, letting the movement of the herd carry you forward. The landscape stretches endlessly ahead, but your journey has shifted. You're not pushing forward anymore. You're floating. Maybe that's the lost art. Not just sleeping standing up, but dreaming in motion. Letting the world blur past without needing to chase it. Mongol warriors weren't just conquerors. They were dreamers with dirt on their boots and stars in their peripheral vision. And now you are too. The rhythm slows. Hoofbeats stretch into long pauses. Breath deepens. Your fingers, once curled from the reins, now rest lightly on the saddle horn, slack and trusting. The horizon no longer beckons. It simply is. A soft line painted in the mellowest golds and gentle greys. You let your eyes drift half closed, not in sleep exactly, but in surrender. The murmurs of the camp, the creak of leather, the rustle of wind-blown grass, all blur into a hush, a whispering lullaby sung by land and beast alike. There's no race to win, no urgency. Just the comfort of knowing the world can keep turning while you rest within it. You've stepped into an ancient rhythm of warriors who dreamed on horseback, who lived between motion and stillness. The sky darkens just a touch, stars beginning to stitch themselves across the vast ceiling above you. Your horse takes another soft step, and you sway with it, not fighting the movement, but welcoming it. The air grows cooler, softer. You pull your cloak a little tighter around your shoulders and exhale, slowly, deeply, letting go. You're not worried about where you'll sleep. You already are. The past, the present, the plain, it all falls into one gentle moment. And in this quiet place between heartbeats, you rest.